outspoken. She's not afraid to ask tough questions. She's not afraid to speak her mind. You've read her column. Maybe you're a fan on Facebook.
No topic is off limits. Straight to the point.
There's no chaser. You're now watching Straight Talk with Carla Zuill.
Welcome back. We are here today in studio with Melodye Vanputten. Now, before the break, Melodye, we were talking about friendship before relationships. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, how important is the African historical connection and now?
Well, again, to kind of bring that home, if you are trying to be a lifelong learner, right? Let's say you already have children and you're trying to teach them the history, you are learning the history, you want somebody to be on the same page as you. You don't want someone who's saying to you, why are you reading all that stuff? Why? No, you want to be on the same page because, again, part of our wholeness and healing as a people depends on us gaining knowledge around our history and culture. And that needs to be a family experience, it needs to be a shared experience. We need to have conversations that deal with the connections around our history and what's happening today. We need to have conversations that deal with what are the lessons from that history and how they can improve my life today. Whether we're talking about conscious decisions around what we eat, what we learn, how we spend our money.
Now, you mentioned earlier about Shea University. Can you tell my audience more about that?
Yes, again, this idea of lifelong learning. Shea University is an outgrowth of the Shea program because people began to ask me, why aren't you doing this program? We need to know. So I began Shea University, it's been a year actually this month, where I create courses that are at the university level in terms of their intensity and the amount of information. And it's about teaching really busy adults about the history and culture that they might pass that information on to their children and grandchildren. So for example, I do courses that are about 4 weeks in duration. They are housed at the Bermuda National Library and they run once a week for a couple of hours. I've already done Life Before Enslavement because that's an area that we don't know enough about. We don't know about the great African empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. We don't know about African philosophy and cosmology. So that course dealt just with that, as well as a timeline of the various things we created in 1,000-year increments. Life Before Enslavement ran in September last year, and it will rerun again this coming September. I've also done a course called the Freedom Fighters. Now, Freedom Fighters was unique in that it connected the global African descendant freedom fighters around the world, showing again our shared struggle for equality, emancipation, and liberation. So it connected chronologically as well as ideas around folks. So for example, when you had, say, Mary Prince going to Europe and talking about her experiences as an enslaved person, at that same time, you also had Frederick Douglass going to Europe doing the same thing. Right? Or when you had the poison plots going on, you had uprisings going on in the United States. So you had parallel things happening around the world. During the 60s, when you had the Black Power movement in the US, you also had the Black Beret Cadre and the Belco riots and all of that happening here. And at the same time, in parts of Africa, you had nationalistic movements going on in South Africa and in Ghana, what have you. So the Freedom Fighters course showed all of those various events in history and how they were connected to one another in order to connect us in history and in today. So I'm running these courses in, like I said, 4-week intervals, and the next set of courses start in September with Life Before Enslavement and also the Harlem Renaissance, which was a very exciting period in terms of culture and literacy and literature in our history.
Is it beneficial for non-blacks to take your courses?
Absolutely. We need a basis of mutual respect based on achievements, based on knowing. After all, we learn about European history and all of its aspects. For non-black people to learn about our history and culture helps to make them whole, helps to heal humanity around this idea that we all have and had something to contribute to the world today.
And how does one sign up to attend Shea University?
I can be contacted by email, Melodye Vanputten at AOL.com, or most people know how to get me. Just give me a call. I'm listed as well, and would be delighted to have you. The courses have been at capacity, so that's just an indication that there's a quiet renaissance going on with people wanting to know their history and culture, and also understanding we can't wait for someone to give it to us.
Okay. Now, you're a woman of many talents, and you're also an award-winning poet.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, we're going to close out the show differently today. First, we're going to have Imwalimu tell us about her books of poetry, and then we're going to close out with a reading of one of her selections called Denial. So tell us briefly about your books.
My poetry is an extension of my work as an Africologist. So Obama Time was the 2009 Best Book Award in the United States for urban poetry, where I chronicled the election of Barack Obama through poetry. Soul Poems was the second book to come out, and it's what I call women's poetry. And there's also poems in here about Bermuda and about Bermuda's history. Sacred Thoughts, which was an award-winning finalist for prayers and devotions last year, is simply that, prayers and devotions. And then my latest work, which I will read from, Healing History, Reflections on Race and Forgiveness in Prose and Poetry, attempts to look at our history and give some of the areas that we need to address that only we can address in terms of reconciling the history and how it has played out in our lives today, hence the poem Denial.
Okay, so now we'll have a part of your selection.
All right. What happens to a people in denial? Not knowing what you do not know and not wanting to know. Denial. Eschewing obvious answers, self-knowledge born, tried and true throughout the ages. A people ignorant to themselves move ignorantly in the world, in denial. It is said when you know better, you do better, but not if you're in denial. Our history truly holds keys to our behavior and answers for healing. The subjects are many. What happens to a people in denial? Let's take food. The slave diet consisted of garbage, animal organs and scraps unwanted by the slave master. To our ancestors' credit, surviving the unsurvivable, they made do with garbage, making it as tasty as possible. But let's be clear, it was and still is garbage. Hog maws, chitlins, pig feet, chicken feet, garbage still. Eating a slave diet without consciousness, taking on disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity in record numbers, dying. What happens to a people in denial? Let's take money, economics, finance. We're the richest, poorest black people in the world. An economic power with no power and no respect. Spending our hard-earned money without purpose, aimlessly, enthusiastically participating, consumerism, materialism, looking like $1 million, can't get your hands on $1,000, got $20 in your pocket, maybe. Self-esteem starved, designer clothes, luxury cars, a $500 handbag with $5 in it. Buying to fill the hole, the void that things never ever truly satisfy. What does it mean to discard one's resources without regard, buying once, begging for needs? What happens to a people in denial? Let's take education. or miseducation. Learning about everything and everyone except oneself. Except oneself. As if your people were nothing, did nothing, never gonna be nothing. No knowledge of our greatness. Envisioning, creating, building, inventing pyramids and civilizations, agriculture, architecture, medicine, science, governance, codes of conduct, service, and all manner of arts. If a mind is a terrible thing to waste, how wasted is a mind that knows nothing of itself? What happens to a people in denial? Not only do we not understand who we are, we don't understand who we have been. Not knowing what you do not know and not wanting to know is a sorry state of affairs. I really don't want to end this poem on this note. My people, we need to wake up. Wake up quick, fast, and in a hurry before we lose too many. We need to wake up to our brilliance, to our potential, to our past, to fashion the future, banishing denial forever.
Yay, thank you so much. That was great. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss on Straight Talk, send an email to talk@channel82.pm.
Thanks for watching Straight Talk with Carla Zuill.